Stand down.
He has brought national and international renown to the community. His knowledge of the history of ballet is unbelievable, and he is respected in our profession.
And one, around the corner. No money.
Iain Webb was born March 30th, 1959, the middle child of 3 children born to Eric and Oris Webb, a brother, Kevin, 3 years older, and a sister, Lorraine, 4 years younger.
I was born in Yorkshire in England in a seaside town called Scarborough.
His father was a hard-working man who put his family's needs first.
He would do anything for the family. He was a fireman, originally got his trade as a plumber, then became a fireman.
His mother had a ballet school. At home, she made sure her children practiced proper English manners.
She was strict, but I think, you know, the background from living in Yorkshire, you know, it is an upbringing of everybody is like that. So, but very fair.
Iain attended Newby and then Scalby schools in Scarborough, and at 15 attended Joseph Rowntree School in York. Iain found school to be difficult.
I'm dyslexic, so back then they didn't even know what the word dyslexic was. So, you know, it was quite often, you know, I was just at the back of the class not doing anything really, just sort of like trying to understand. If I could get out of school, and even if I couldn't, I used to get out, and we lived at the seaside, so a mate of mine, we used to more often than not go off somewhere else, and it was always at the end of the week, Webb, Wardle, where's your homework? And then we'd get the cane, or we'd get, you know, punished for not doing it. But so it was not a happy time.
Besides enjoying the northern England seaside with his friends, Iain participated in local athletics.
I used to play soccer, I used to go on the trampoline, and basketball was just something that was just sort of like taking off in the schools in England, so I was always quite good at doing that because I could jump and get in the basket.
When he was 14, his jumping ability would be called upon by his mother, who needed a boy dancer to fill in for her class.
She only had one boy who was in the school, and he wouldn't go on stage, so I got a little bit of money if I would go on under the absolute thing, no tights, no ballet whatsoever.
While he had no training, he enjoyed the experience and was noticed by one of his mother's associates.
I was in the studio waiting to do, I think it was Fagin out of Oliver, and a friend of my mother's who was a ballet examiner popped into the studio, and she apparently said, "Have you seen your son?" And I was at the back just prancing around, taking the mickey really. And so they went to my father and asked if what he thought about if they asked if I wanted to do ballet. And he said, "Yeah, you can ask him, it's his decision." And then was horrified when I said yes.
It was an epiphany moment for Iain.
Something connected. It wasn't just the physical aspect of it. There was all being in a studio with a lot of girls. Those were bonuses rather than, but there was something inside that really connected.
Iain began to embark upon learning to dance. However, he sought out other teachers besides his mother.
I never let her teach me. It was one of those, and I remember one day I saw the door of the studio open, and I could see she was like looking in, so then I just got dressed and went because I was like not gonna, I guess not have my mother see me prancing around in tights was really probably an issue back then, but it was one of those where, so she didn't actually teach me.
At 14, Iain was old to be a beginner. That presented challenges for him as well as his parents. At this age, would he be able to develop the ability to become a professional dancer?
It was a difficult time, you know, I was much older, so I would be always told to go to the back of the class and follow, and these little kids of like 8 or whatever, and then I was at 14. But it was one of those where I wanted to do it.
While his father did not voice his opinions, he moved the family to York the following year in order for Iain to pursue ballet, and then supported Iain's move to London the next year.
He had at one stage, I think, 4 jobs in order that he could make sure my brother and sister were given opportunities as well, but that they could afford for me to live in London. So he sacrificed a lot, but never really, he was proud but never said it.
Making the decision to pursue ballet was not easy for Iain. Boys in this part of England at this era played soccer. They did not dance. Iain attempted to keep his dancing quiet. However, when his best friend Neil and he had an argument, Neil revealed his secret.
One day in class he got up and said, "Oh, Iain Webb does ballet." And I got up and said, "I tried it once, I don't do it." And well, we had this backward and forward in the middle of this class. And then a few years later, when I was moving to London, he came up and he said, "But you told me you didn't do it anymore." I said, "Well, I'm not going to get up and be shamed in front of the class again." So he was quite shocked that I was still doing it on the quiet sort of thing.
At 16, Iain moved to London to study ballet full-time. His hope was to enroll in the Royal Ballet School.
All my career has been by default, and I'll go from there. So at 16, a friend was going to audition for the Royal Ballet School, so his parents took me down there. And I did the class, and then his parents were taken into the office, and basically they said how wonderful their son was, but the other boy that you brought down had no talent whatsoever.
Iain was not to be deterred. While he did not get into the Royal Ballet School, he enrolled in the Rambur School of Ballet, named for Polish ballet dancer Marie Rambur, who fled Poland to London in 1914 prior to the outbreak of the First World War. In 1920, she opened a school of dancing in Bedford Gardens, Kensington. The Ballet Rambur Company gave its first performances in 1926 when Marie Rambur and her students presented the ballet A Tragedy of Fashion by Frederick Ashton, then one of her students.
I auditioned there and they would say, "Okay, do a double tour." And I went, "What's that?" They said, "Oh, you jump up in the air, you turn twice and you land." So I went, "Oh, okay, that sounds all right." So I just did all these things, not knowing what they were or how to do them. So I went there, and again, it wasn't an easy time because I refer a lot to this thing inside, but I knew certain elements weren't necessarily right, but I didn't know enough to know why that was.
While at Rambur, Iain sustained an injury that slowed his progress. However, he found friends who helped him.
People were very supportive outside of the school. So there was one of the top Pilates teachers in the world sort of took me under his wing, and he gave me exercise and he trained me to get me back. There was a group of ladies, and they were always called the Floral Street Gang, were the ballet fans at Covent Garden. And they eventually started buying tickets for me to go and see the Royal Ballet, so I would be there every night, and I was watching all this, going into the studio and realising what I was seeing in the mirror wasn't reflecting what it was.
Iain attended as many performances as he could. When the Stuttgart Ballet came to London, he was mesmerized. He thought these are the best dancers he had ever seen. If only he could get to study with them, it would change his life.
Luckily, Richard Craig and Marcia Haley were two of the biggest stars in the world, and Stuttgart Ballet. They were guesting with the Royal Ballet. So I was like a stage door Johnny. I went and got their autographs, and I said how much I loved the company, and did they take people from England, I didn't say people from Yorkshire, I said people from England, into the company. And Richard Cragen basically said, "Oh, we leave tomorrow, but if we'd have known earlier, we could have watched you, and then we could have advised you, but just come to Stuttgart and we'll see what we can do."
Young Iain was thrilled. He called his parents and told them he had an opportunity to go to Stuttgart. They had been saving money for his 18th birthday present and bought his train ticket to Stuttgart and provided money for him to stay at the YMCA.
And I went off and turned up and waited outside the stage door in the morning. and Richard Cragen came along. And so, Mr. Cragen, I'm here. He went, what? I said, you told me in London to just turn up, so I'm here. So he went into an absolute panic. And obviously in hindsight, he must have said that to hundreds of people. But I took it that he was telling me, and I believe if someone's speaking, they're telling me the truth. So he actually got me in to do class with the company because the school was on holiday and everything, and they gave me a scholarship.
Unfortunately for Iain, the scholarship only covered classes, and he could not afford the room and board. He returned to England and decided he would give the Royal Ballet School another try.
And got taken into the office, and immediately we hear you got into Stuttgart. We need to know now. So the bottom line is I went to the Royal Ballet School instead of Stuttgart.
At 18, Iain could only attend the school for 1 year. However, Terry Westmoreland, a teacher with the ballet, arranged for him to receive an extra year. Iain was 2 months into his second year when a dancer in the Sadler's Wells Royal Ballet was injured. Iain was called upon to take his place.
I went out on tour as a student, or apprentice as they call them these days, and stayed with them all the way through. I'd come back and do classes with the school, but I was mainly on tour the whole time.
At the end of that year, Iain had to find his next position. Christine Anthony, principal dancer for the Dutch National Ballet, was guest teaching, and he asked her what she would suggest he do.
She said, okay, leave it to me. So she went to speak to the director of Sadler's Wells Royal Ballet and said, oh, what's happening with the student boy, Iain? And Peter, right, so Peter said, oh, I don't know. And so she said, oh, good, can I take him to Dutch National with me? I can give him a place there. And 2 days later, I got a job with the Sadler's Wells Royal Ballet. So by default, I joined the Sadler's Wells Royal Ballet. And that started what was eventually an 18 years with Sadler's Wells Royal Ballet and the Royal Ballet.
As a member of the Corps de Ballet, Iain was expected to do his job, stay quiet, and not talk to the principal dancers, especially the women. However, he was mesmerized by the company's female principal dancer, a beautiful South African named Margaret Barbieri,
who was just everything you could possibly dream about. She was just beautiful, and she was... and I used to go down and I used to watch from the side of the stage, but could never said anything to her.
Margaret had also noticed Iain.
As always, when new dancers join a company, you're always interested to see the new talent. And I noticed this young man. He had something special about him. So did some of the other dancers, but he definitely was special. He had an amazing elevation, which means he jumped very high, unlike most of the other dancers. So he stood out in a class. He also had this look about him that he loved what he was doing.
Over time, the two would build a friendship. Margaret introduced Iain to the National Theatre, and they would frequently spend evenings together attending the theatre. Iain was smitten.
Now, one evening, I'm in the car driving with him, and I say, now, Iain, there's a lot of gossip going on in this company, and I don't really like it, but you and I know there's nothing in it. So, well, let's just, we continue our friendship.
The play we saw that night was the worst play I've ever seen in my life. I don't even remember anything about it. And on the way home, I did suddenly, almost on the highway, say, okay, stop, I'll get out of here and sort of find my own way.
And that gave me a clue that there was a little bit more in our relationship than I'd guessed.
The rumors of their friendship soon brought the disapproval of the company, which was directed upon Iain.
In fact, I got taken out of every role that I was down to dance. It got taken away from me because, not only am I speaking to a principal, but I'm also sort of dating her, so it was very much frowned on.
Their friendship would blossom into a love affair. When they announced they were dating, Iain was sure he would lose his position.
But then one day, Dame Nanette de Valois, the founder of the Royal Ballet, came and met us, and she said, I want to see your young man over there. And so we go to the car, and she looks him up and down, and she likes blue eyes anyway.
She gave me a wink, turned around and went back. And that kind of like suddenly we'd got the sign of approval.
And things changed after that. So we always said Dame Nanette must have said something to someone, because the situation changed and suddenly Iain was getting the opportunities that he should have got. He was dancing Oberon in the Dream, Two Pigeons, La Female Garde, and then Swan Lake, and lots of wonderful roles.
With Dame Nanette's approval, their relationship blossomed. They were married July 30th, 1982 at St. Paul's Cathedral in London.
We had a blessing there, and then a few years later we had the Catholic Church one as well.
I always say that we got married a year and a day after Princess Diana and Charles at St. Paul's Cathedral, but we were in the basement. We were in the crypt down there.
During his tenure at Sadler's Wells, Iain and Margaret developed a strong working relationship and friendship with Sir Frederick Ashton, who had been the director of the company from 1963 to 1970. It was with Sir Frederick over lunch in 1986 that Margaret shared a life-changing secret.
We went to the canteen, the three of us, and then she couldn't hold it anymore. She said, "Oh, Sir Fred, I have to tell Iain something." So yeah, but it's a secret. No one knows. So she told him that she was, or told us she was expecting. So I went back to the studio, and by then it was the full cast. And Sir Fred was sat there with his, he chain smoked all the time, so with his cigarette, and he was, "Oh, pop, pop, more body, more body." And I was going, the other company went, "What did he call you?" I went, "Oh, no, it's fine, it's fine." "Oh, pop, pop, do this." And they kept saying, "What's he saying?" I went, "No, it's fine, don't worry, he's just, sending me up." And then I remember I was wearing cut-off pink tights, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm a ballet dancer," or whatever the attitude was. And he suddenly got off his chair and came over to me, and he whispered, he said, "Oh, wearing pink and going to be a father? Oh, I don't think so." And he shuffled back and he sat down at the front of the studio. The staff were all looking at him, and he was chuckling. He was like laughing, and I was bright red and laughing, and everyone was just going like, "What's going on here between you two?" So that's how I heard the news that Maggie was expecting.
Their son, Jason, was born July 29, 1987.
They thought I wasn't going to be able to conceive, for various reasons. Some tests proved that maybe I had blocked tubes and it might be a problem. Anyway, to cut a long story short, he's a miracle baby, and I did manage to conceive, so he is and was very special to us both.
On August 18, 1988, their friend and mentor, Sir Frederick, died unexpectedly. Iain was devastated. He felt he was at a crossroads. Margaret was about to retire, and Iain no longer wanted to travel with Sadler's Wells performing the ballets he had been doing. He reached out to Sir Anthony Dowell, who was the artistic director of the Royal Ballet in Covent Garden.
Basically, I just said I wanted to come to Covent Garden, to the Royal Ballet. And his words were, "Well, what do you want from me?" And I basically said, "Well, I don't want to do the princes. I don't want to do Colas in La Female Garde. I've done it. It's one of the best roles I've ever done. I loved it. But I want to do the character roles. In other words, I want to put on a mask and hide behind the mask so it's not me on there." And so he took me into the company. He gave me the job, but I had to then politically go through loopholes. So about a year and a half later, I joined the Royal Ballet.
In 1996, Iain retired from the Royal Ballet. He was then invited by Tony Award-winning Matthew Bourne to be rehearsal director of his production of Swan Lake.
He had a company of 8 or 10 dancers that used to go into like a van and tour around, and then suddenly he put on Swan Lake, which was a full production. It was all male swans, but it wasn't a camp send-up. We went to LA for 2 months. We put it on Broadway. At that point, any dance productions on Broadway broke all those records. So, I worked with him for 3 years.
In 1999, he was offered to continue with the company as tour director for a year. At the same time, Tetsuya Kumakawa, a former principal dancer with the Royal Ballet, asked Iain to join his newly formed K-Ballet company in Japan as ballet master. The job was to last for 2 months.
So I had the 2.5 months, a year's contract with our son at one of the top private schools in London, and with that it came with quite a lot of pounds for the fees. Margaret said, you know, the thing is that whatever's inside you, you're going to do what you need to do. You know, yes, it would be nice if you did the year's job because we'd have but if you don't, we'll find how we'll survive. But you've got to do what's in your heart, otherwise you're a nightmare to live with or be around. So I went to Japan for 2.5 months and stayed there 8 years.
Iain became assistant artistic director of the company and worked with Kumakawa on building the company into one of Japan's leading ballet companies.
It was the only company at the time that toured. But more importantly than anything, and the thing that everybody should be really proud of with Tetsuya, with Teddy and the company, was we were the first company to pay the female dancers. And when I left, 8 years later, 2 other companies joined that.
During the years he was performing and then working in Japan, he and Margaret were raising their son, Jason. Iain was a firm yet loving father.
I've always loved that he's always been excited about whatever I've been excited about. You know, even if that had no interest to him whatsoever. If he saw that I was excited about it, he wanted to be excited about it as well. I've always been into a lot of different things, and so he's always been supportive of that, and he's always been wanting to go that extra mile.
In 2007, the Sarasota Ballet was searching for a new artistic director. Iain heard of the opportunity and arranged an interview with the search committee.
Really, this is the only job, and I've been in the business 30 odd years, where I actually interviewed for, for anything. I'd never been interviewed for a job. As I say, I always got it by default, and so this was, you know, the first interesting journey.
He was one of the final 3. He came here, and he was obviously the one to choose. He conducted a class for our dancers, and they loved every minute of it. As a matter of fact, he was the only one of the 3 candidates who actually asked if he could go back and watch some more of the classes and get to know the dancers a little bit. And that showed us that he really was interested.
He just understands how to nurture the artist, how to give the community what it needs. His planning is impeccable. He would have been in another life, he would have been a great impresario, this young man. There is nothing that he doesn't cover.
He knew what his goal was. And that's why when he was here, when he started 10 years ago, I think they had 30 dancers. He built the company up. He brought in a lot of Ashton repertoire, of course, because of his love of Ashton, his relationship with Ashton, and his love for Ashton's ballets. But you know, he also brought in many other works.
His programming of his performances is brilliant. He has the respect of reviewers, nationally and internationally, of people in the field, of the trusts that allow these great ballets from the choreographers that have passed on to be used in the companies. He has friends that give him choreography, which has allowed us to build this company. We could not afford the choreography costs, and now we have a company big enough, which he has planned exactly, that we can have the great ballets from any choreographer and company in the world.
Bringing her considerable talents and resume to the Sarasota Ballet along with Iain was his wife, Margaret, principal dancer of the Royal Ballet from 1970 to 1990. In 2012, she became assistant director of the Sarasota Ballet and has been an integral part of the success the company has achieved.
We work well together. I think he's a little bit, he has these wonderful dreams and visions. I sometimes have to be the practical one, yes, but I think we work well together.
He and his wife, Margaret, are wonderful to them. They know what each dancer can do, and they make sure that they are in the right place at the right time in the right ballet. They treat them as family. Everybody in the company respects them, and they respect the dancers back, which of course I think is a marvelous, marvelous thing.
I always thought I had an incredible repertoire that I danced. I thought how fortunate I was to have such a varied repertoire that developed me as a dancer. But then I look at what our dancers have and I think it's even better than what I had, and I see the development. We have dancers who joined in his first year and they are now principals.
It was not my intention to bring in all the Ashton ballets. You know, I brought in Hans van Manen, who's the most famous modern choreographer. The mixture of it. Matthew Bourne, we were the first ballet company in the world to do. So I don't have, there's no book written, there's no formula.
And dance.
As artistic director, Iain continues to take an active role, conducting regular classes with the company.
Not too high, not broken wrists. Everything square. Shoulders, hips. Only second shoulder go. Tight suiting you, skippity doo. Generous groupettes. We'll never get money. Here we go, generous. Into the royal box. And lift. And turn, step.
Throughout his career, Iain has developed a vast library of works devoted to ballet, as well as a collection of art capturing the form. It is here in his library that he frequently finds his inspiration.
I can have the worst day ever, and I can just come in here and just recharge my batteries. So I can pull a book and I'll go, oh, when was the last time this was done? Oh, the company would look great doing this.
At the Sarasota Ballet, Iain has made it his mission to preserve the historic works of those choreographers who have come before, but he also places an emphasis on encouraging new works by young choreographers just developing their talent.
You can't rely on just it being a company for the history, but it is my personal mission or my personal fight to try and make sure we don't lose a lot of these great works, choreographers of today and the future.
We ask Iain Webb his advice for those who follow.
I think that you've just got to be honest. If you commit to something, you've got to commit and see it all the way through. If you don't respect the history, how can you create new works that in 30, 40, 50, 100 years later demand the respect?